Hello, everyone. This is Jake with a little announcement before today's episode. Your beloved host, Charles Lung, unfortunately forgot to purchase internet before moving into his new apartment, so there's going to be a little bit of a delay on future episodes as we go into a bit of a hiatus, which in reality could not even be a hiatus, as he very well could get internet in the next few days. But he told me it would take a while, so I thought I'd record this little announcement for you just to give you a heads up. So if you need your VRP fix in the next few weeks as we go into this dark age, you could just listen to this episode over and over again, and maybe that will help sedate you a bit. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles Lung. With me, as always, is my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob? My voice is like, I don't know what's wrong with it.
I don't know either. I can't tell you.
I got that vocal fry. That's what people say, right?
Because you're too busy talking about pilots for TV shows.
Too busy talking about this television pilot. Because we said a few weeks ago we would be doing a kids show that you could like sell merch for and all this stuff. And you said you were going to do that, and then you figured out it was actually kind of hard to come up with a Pokemon style show that you could sell like cards and merch for.
So much easier to come up with like a adventure show than it is a toy show.
Like a toy show. But I've come together with taken the two ideas and smashed them together a bit. So this show,
a toy?
There's toys. Oh my god, the main cast is so toyable. It's great. But there's no like cards. There's no like game or whatever. But it is I'm relating it mostly to the Backyardigans. Have you seen the Backyardigans when you were a child?
I have. Good show.
Yeah. So ages 5 to 10 is, I would say, the age range for this show, and it follows a crew of animals as they have adventures on a pirate ship, and they sail the open seas.
A pirate ship.
Yeah.
You got to think for pirates, man.
I love pirates, and I loved pirates as a kid. And another thing that I loved as a kid was the concept of like little guys living in a big world, and they utilize like our people's garbage to make like stuff out of it, right? I really liked that as a kid, like in the Tale of Despero, he used a thumbtack as a sword or stuff like that. I always love shit like that. Or the Great Mouse Detective, that Disney movie. I love stuff like that. And so I'm gonna, kind of put those together, and we're gonna have a crew of animals that live and sail on this toy pirate ship. And they think it's in the open seas, but it's really in a small lake in a park, right? And so It's just them sailing around the park, and they have adventures, and they learned lessons because it's a kid's show, and so each episode they're confronted with a problem. They try and solve it one way. They realize that doesn't work. They solve it another way that you wouldn't think that they would solve it, and bing bang bosh, right?
It's all solved. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Each episode's going to be very much a ABC. There's not going to be a whole lot of thematic depth. There's not going to be a lot of strange plot lines, anything like that. It's going to be very much a outline specific show. And so I'm going to tell you the characters first.
What is it? Serialized, I think.
Yeah, serialized, or what's the I can't think of the term.
Serialized, but there's another term.
There is a term. It's like, okay.
It doesn't matter. I'll come to it in a minute.
Yeah, fine. Dan Harmon does it with Rick and Morty. Every episode has the same like style. Each story happens in the same way, but I can't think of the terminology. So
episodic. Episodic versus serialized.
Yeah, it's very episodic. So our characters they're all different animals. So we have our first character. He's a pigeon. His name is Bronte, and he is
Bronte. I like that name.
Yeah, he is a grizzled veteran of the crew. A lazy braggart whose tales are 70% made up. So he's like an old-timey, Like, he's the most piratey looking one. He's got an eye patch, he's got a peg leg, right? He's this old-timey blustering seaman who would, he makes up all these stories about, like, I once fought 100 men at once using nothing but a rusty, toothpick, right? And all this stuff.
I don't know why it's rusty, but it's wood.
It's a metal toothpick that's rusted.
Metal toothpick.
You sure it wasn't just made out of wood? No, it was a rusty toothpick that rusted. So shush.
There's a rusty toothpick that rusted. Yes, Charlie.
Yeah, it does, because he's a liar. Yeah. But he's got wisdom, but he's also kind of like he's got a very high. Yeah, he's a bit out of it. He's very old. He's the oldest member of the crew, and he doesn't really do very much. But he's, everyone likes him, but he's always getting himself into trouble. I think he's like Knuckles, Captain Knuckles from The Misadventures of Flapjack.
Oh, yeah. Great show to pull from.
Oh, yeah, great show in general, because it was really weird and gross, and I loved it. And so, our second character is a rat named Wild. This is the muscle of the crew, the ship's half-brother, and the lovable moron, right? So he's not the brightest guy on the crew, but he's lovable. He cares about his friends, but he's sometimes, he doesn't think things through, and then he gets into trouble because he doesn't think things through, right? But everyone loves him.
You know, it'd be funny.
What?
Is if he really didn't like being called a rat. He's a mouse,
Yeah, that would be funny, because the captain...
It's like an insult that he gets called.
Yeah, because the captain, Cap'n Dumas, is a mouse, and he is the unlikely leader of the motley crew of the Recalled.
The Motley Crew?
The
I
Motley
didn't realize
Crew.
he was in a band.
Yeah, he's the lead singer and guitarist. And he's, he's a people pleaser, basically. He's a mouse, and he's half-brothers with a rat, and they're not actually related, but they're, they're family because they care about each other. That's another big theme of the show, is that they're a family, even though they're all different species. Captain Dumas is a people pleaser. He's always working to make sure his crew is happy, but he sometimes, gets in a little over his head, and he's very, not reckless, but he overestimates his own ability, because he's the smallest member of the crew. He's physically the smallest, and he's the captain, and everyone listens to him. I think he's very Rocket Raccoon-esque, but without the violence and the cursing and such.
So Bradley Cooper's playing him, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a bat named Shelley. She is the scout and first mate of the ship. She is curious and anxious, and she always wants what's best for her friends, but what she thinks is best for her friends may not always be what's best for her friends, because she's so anxious. She's worried about everything, because she's a nocturnal animal, and they do most of their stuff during the day, so she's kind of nervous about what's going on in the world. And each of these characters has a very specific design, and I think Shelley, the bat, is think of Amelia Earhart, but a bat, right? So she's got an old-timey, aviators.
She's dead.
Yeah, she's dead. She's eaten by coconut crabs within the first 5 minutes of the first episode.
Really brutally, lots of blood.
Oh yeah, so much blood and
anything
gore.
else in the show. It's really big throw off.
Yeah, the coconut crab plushies do not sell well.
No.
But she's got the old-timey aviator cap on. She's she's spunky, but she's anxious, right? Captain Dumas is think of a Captain Hook-esque. He's got a big hat. He's got a big feather out of his hat. He's got big ruffles on his shirt and all this stuff. The rat, Wild, think he's classic pirate. He's got a cannon. He holds a cannon on his arm because he's the biggest. And like I said, the pigeon, he's this old-timey grizzled pirate, and he's got an eye patch and a peg leg and all this stuff, right? And our last character, who's a mole. Her name is Melville, and she's the lookout and inventor of the crew, right? So she is she's a mole, but she's in the crow's nest, and she's got huge goggles on that make her eyes really big, and she's very curious and resourceful, but she's often getting herself into trouble because of her curiosity. She's always experimenting and inventing things, and sometimes those things will solve a problem, but sometimes they'll create a problem, right? But that's the crew. Everybody's their own plushie, their own action figure, and they all come into the in the toy box set of the Recalled, because it's a toy pirate ship that has been recalled, and it was discarded by a child or a mother of a child who, didn't want their child playing with a recalled toy ship. So it's just got this big, on the side of it, there's these big, letters printed that just say Recalled. And so that's how they came up with the name for the ship. And it's, it's a fun little joke, because they don't really know what recalled mean. They just think that's the name of the ship, right? But like I said, this is a show for 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds, so it's very simple in its episode plots. I would imagine each episode is 11 minutes long, right? So you can fit 2 episodes in a 22-minute time block, which is, the typical length of an episode of television in the United States of America.
Or 11 for kids, but
yeah.
2 episodes,
Yeah. So I've got 5 episode ideas written down. I'm going to tell you all the ideas, and you can, add things, come up with some ideas of your own, that sort of thing. And also help me think of a name, because the name is really, I think, going to be the hardest part, because you got to find something that speaks to kids, right?
Yeah.
Because the crew of the Recalled doesn't really speak to kids. That's too much. Or Recalled doesn't, I think that doesn't work for kids, Nope. So, I don't know, Lakeside Adventures, let's say. That's the name right now, until we come up with something better.
Yeah, that shouldn't be hard. Lakeside Adventures.
Lakeside Adventures. So...
Why don't we call them the Los Angeles Lakers?
Yes, okay, the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers find themselves encountering a mysterious sea creature in the lake, and they're like, it's this monstrous thing, and each one of the crew comes up with a different description of it, and obviously Bronte the pigeon, he's like, oh my god, I know this thing, I fought this thing, one time I had to ride it into shore because my ship was capsized by it, and the crew was lost, but I was able to tame it, and, comes up with this whole story, right? And they spend the whole episode trying to figure out what it is, Melville, obviously, she comes up with some sort of machine to figure out what it is, and then the machine gets destroyed by some sort of ridiculous hijinks. What's his name? Wild. He's like, alright, well, he dives right into the water to try and wrestle it up, but it spits him back out because it's obviously way bigger than him. Shelley's tried to look at it from, a bird's eye perspective, but obviously she can't see it because it's underwater, right? And all this, they do all these things, and eventually they're able to corner it, right? And they're able to, get it into some sort of a position by utilizing all of their skills together, and they figure it out, and they get it in a net, and they haul it up, and they realize that it's not a horrible monster or anything like that, it's just a trout. It's a trout named Dale. And Dale says, hey, everybody. Hi.
That's his voice.
Yeah, that's his voice. I'm used to being underwater. Yeah. Oh, R.I.P. And so they decide that he's not actually a monster, he's a friend. He's a nice, fishy friend. And so they let him go.
Fishy friends, not food.
Yeah, exactly. And, except for when they're food later in the season.
Okay.
But Dale doesn't become food because he's a big guy and he can talk and he's smart. Most fish aren't smart, right? Mm-hmm. And so and they let him go, and then that's the thing. They've made friends with a monster, right? And it turns out it wasn't a monster; it was just a guy, right, named Dale. So that's kind of how I want each episode to be structured. Is they come up with a problem, they try and figure out all the solutions to the problem. Then they solve the problem, and then you get some sort of it's turned back on them, and they, or it's turned back on the audience, one or the other, right? And so our second episode is Captain Dumas. He finds a treasure map, right? And again, every single one of these episodes could be turned into some sort of toy line, right? So just imagine Dale the Trout as a big plushie that you have in your Lakeside Adventures play kit. Oh God, I hope we come up with a better name than that.
Yeah.
I spent
What's the protagonist's name? Like, who do you think is the main character?
I think Captain Dumas is the protagonist. Just because he's
That's
the captain.
Mouse, right?
Yeah, that's the mouse, and he's the captain, and he's the smallest. And so I think kids would identify with him the most. Because I think every character should be played by an adult. Like, I'm thinking Bronte, for example, is played by Ian McKellen. Sir Ian McKellen, you know? Like, all of the characters are played by, like, in my mind, they're just played by really, like, well-respected actors, which I think would be funny. Like, you get Willem Dafoe to play Wild the Rat. You know, shit like that. I think it'd be funny. But maybe we get Dumas to actually be played by a kid, and so it's got a kid's voice, right? So the kids identify with Dumas the most, right? But
I mean, you could go something like, you know, Dumas, The Adventures of Dumas and the Lake Pirates or something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Captain Dumas and the Lakeside Pirates. Captain Dumas and the Pirates of Erie Creek. Erie Creek. Something like that. Yeah. We'll brainstorm after I get through these episodes.
Yeah, I'll keep thinking.
Yeah. So, episode 2, Captain Dumas, he finds this old treasure map, right? And he's in, like, an old-timey bar, like a pirate bar, and he's like, yeah, whatever, and he makes a deal, and he plays Go Fish, right? Because they're not gonna actually have poker in this kid show, so he wins at a game of Go Fish, and he wins this, Wild Goose Chase map. That's what it's called, because it was, a map created by the legendary pirate Wild Goose. And it's this map that leads them all over the lake in search of this incredible treasure that Wild Goose hid before he was, before he escaped the lake, right? And they meet all sorts of crazy things. They go to, and they meet like a tribe of frogs, right? And the frogs are hopping at them, and they don't speak their language. They just speak in ribbits. And then Bronte is like, I know a bit of frog, and he ribbits at them, and it turns out that he just said something extremely offensive in their language, and so they have to run away, Indiana Jones style, right? They go in and they find like this tomb that's like full of booby traps, but again, it's a kid show, so it can't be, there's no deadly traps. It's just like a shoe fell onto the ground and stubbed my toe. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. That sort of thing, right? And they land on the end of the treasure. They get to where Wild Goose's chase leads. And it's this huge pile of gold. Like tons and tons of like gold bars and gold coins and all this stuff and emeralds and diamonds. And the whole crew's looking at it. And they're like, what? What's all this? What do we want with all this? This is stupid. And then Captain Dumas goes and investigates it, and he pushes it over, and it's gold painted onto a wooden screen, and it falls back to reveal this giant pile of grapes. And that's the treasure, because they were animals and they don't know what to do with gold. And so the episode ends with them having a huge feast of grapes, and it's a big fun thing, right? Pile of grapes, and then they eat the pile of grapes, and it's a big fun time. That's the end of episode 2. Episode 3, the crew finds this abandoned firefighter's helmet, right? And Bronte, he knows what this is for, because he's seen the giants wear it on their heads, and so he, explains to the rest of the crew that this is a helmet. And they all try and wear the helmet, but obviously it's a human-sized helmet, so it's too big for them. And so the whole crew is like, well, we gotta go and sell this to somebody and make a nice profit off of it. And so they go to all over the lake, or the sea, I should say. They go all over to all different sections of the sea, and they meet all different, people. They talk to the frogs, and the frogs try and buy it, but none of the helmet doesn't fit their heads. Then they go talk to the beavers, and the beavers try it on. It doesn't fit their heads. It's closer, but it doesn't fit, right? They take it to the storks, and the storks all try it on, and it doesn't work. And they finally decide, oh, well, we're just stuck with this helmet now, because we can't, like, litter. We can't do that. That's ridiculous. That would be insane. We're pirates. We're not, evil. That's what one of them would say, or something along those lines. And then they finally bring it to, like, they come ashore and they're like, we never know what to do with this helmet. And then this family of moles, like, comes out of the ground. And they say, are you selling this boat? And they're like, no, we're not selling our boat. And then they point to the helmet, and they're like, that boat, are you selling that boat? And they're like, that's not a... And Captain Dumas stops them and is like, yes, we are selling that boat. And they give them... I haven't figured out what currency would be in this universe. I'm imagining it'd be some sort of, like, foodstuffs, Like, they get a whole, like, sleeve of saltine crackers.
Bottle caps. No.
Yeah, bottle caps. Yeah. I don't know what they use for bottle caps for. Well, except for...
Something kind of sad when you get older and you think about it, like, that's trash that people have thrown in the lake. Like, coins. Well, I guess people throw coins in the lakes, right?
Yeah.
Could be like pennies and shit.
Yeah, pennies. That's fine. That's good, actually. And so the family of moles buys the fire helmet and uses it as a boat, and they sail off into the sunset, and that's the end of the episode, right? So again, using stuff and finding stuff and kind of turning it on its head to make the audience think like, I guess sometimes you can use something not for its intended purpose, but it'll be just as useful, right? Lessons for kids, man. That's what we're doing here. Yeah. So episode 4, and this is the episode I was thinking about when I made the show, was the crew encounters their evil twins, right? And so they're all like the exact opposite of them. Like
Admiral Dumas.
Yeah, exactly. Admiral. I didn't have names for him.
Admiral Scallywag.
Well, because all of the characters are named after like historical writers. Bronte and Wilde and Dumas and Shelley and Melville, right? And so maybe we could do it like all of the evil crew are named after historical painters, right?
Oh, so we hate painters?
No.
Well, no, we gotta push our agenda on these kids. Who do we hate, Charlie? What group of people do we need to impress here as the bad guys?
Sporty people, sports people.
I like sports, though.
Yeah. How about this? Television writers.
I was going to say we do actors.
Or actors. Yeah, nobody likes actors. Captain Pitt. There you go.
Brad Pitt, okay.
Yeah.
Captain Brad Pitt.
Captain Bradley Pitt. Pittance.
Brad.
Yeah. Brad.
No, Rad. R-A-D.
No, Captain Bad Pitt, because he's bad.
Bad Pitt.
There you go.
That's all right.
And they're the opposites of all of them, right? So Bronte's opposite isn't a pigeon, it's a seagull, right? The muscle is a mouse, and the captain is a rat, right? And they're like, that's weird. The mole, the opposite of the mole is a vole, right? The opposite of the bat is a what do you call it?
Cat.
A squirrel. A cat. I was gonna say squirrel, but a cat. Yeah, sure.
Cats are kind of big, though. Well, I guess most of these are kind of big. So cats.
They're kind of big. Yeah, let's do a kitten. And they pilot the ship, the Remodeled, rather than the Recalled. It's the Remodeled, and the evil twins, right? They try and ignore them, but they really can't because they're just like they're so mean and they keep picking on them and all this stuff. And they challenge them to a race. And Captain Dumas, he's had enough of this, and he accepts. He accepts the race, and he's like, all right, fine, we'll have a race. And there's the race takes up most of the episode, right? There's this big dramatic race, so they go through the lake, and they pass by the swans, and they pass by what else is in a lake? The lily pads, and they pass, it's a whole thing. And eventually the Remodeled overtakes the Recalled, right? And the Remodeled wins. But the Remodeled was pushing itself so hard, and it's not made of the same sturdy equipment as the Recalled, and so it starts to sink. And all of the members, all their evil twins, they're in the water and they're stuck and they're like, help us. And at first, the crew of the Recalled was like, well, we're not going to help you guys. You've been jerks. And then Captain Dumas decides that they have to be the bigger animals and they have to help out their opposites, because that's what a good pirate does. And so they save them all and bring them back to shore. And as soon as they get back to shore, the animals, like, the entire time they're on the boat, all of their evil twins are, like, really thankful and appreciative, and they're like, we're so sorry about all those mean things we said, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as they get on the shore, they're like, haha, you guys are so stupid, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And and the crew of the Recalled is, like, kind of put out, but Dumas, like, gives them a rousing speech that's like, we know we're better than them, because they wouldn't have helped us out, and they needed our help, we saved them, and they're just too scared to admit that they need help, right? And you should always ask for help when you need it, right? Again, it's for kids. Yeah, and episode 5, and this is the episode that I'm like, we could probably tweak this a bit. I mean, we could probably tweak all of these a bit, but episode 5 is especially, like, I don't know. I was just kind of, like, winging stuff at this point. So the crew gets addicted to a new kind of soup, right? They find this new kind of soup, addicted. Like, obviously, they're not gonna be jonesing like drug addicts, but they're like, we love this new soup, and they're drinking all this soup, and they love it. Bronte got the recipe from a guy because he won him off a Go Fish game in town, and it's a whole thing. And they drink a ton of this soup, and then they all go to sleep, and they all wake up, and they're super excited to have the soup until they all see each other, and they've realized they've all turned bright purple from the soup, right? So they're like, oh my god, we can't have this soup anymore, it's all turned us bright purple, what are we gonna do? And they're pretty, they love the soup, they really want to keep the soup, but they realize it's better for them if they get rid of the soup. And then they pour the soup overboard, like all the barrels and barrels of soup that they made, they pour it overboard. And then I said that it turns the fish purple, like the soup goes into the water and it turns the fish purple. But I'm thinking maybe it could, like, turn some sort of, like, a green, like a leafy green, like the crew eats the lily pads, and it turns the lily pads purple. And so they pick the lily pads the next day, and they start, preparing them, and they all have lily pad salad, and then they wake up the next.
Because they're having lily pads and all soup.
Yeah.
They take a bite, and they're like, oh, these lily pads are a lot better than normal.
Yeah, and then they eat it all, and they've all turned back to the normal color at this point. And then they eat it all, and they go back to sleep, and they wake up the next day, and they're like, oh, darn, because they're all bright purple again. And they're like, what are we gonna do? And they realize that you can't just throw things, if you have a problem, you can't just, like, throw it onto someone else to deal with. You have to deal with that problem by yourself. Or, you have to deal with your problems yourselves. You can't just wait for someone else to deal with it. So they get all the lily pads, and they clean them off and get all the purple off of them. And they, take all the purple residue, and they get rid of it safely by putting it in the trash can. Because that's what you should do.
Yeah, teaching kids not to litter. Good job, Charlie.
Teaching kids to take responsibility for their own problems and not to litter.
You all thought it was a drug lesson, but it kind of was, but it was mostly a litter lesson.
Yeah, mostly a litter lesson.
Don't litter.
Those are my episodes. Don't litter, kids, and don't do drugs either. Yeah. Captain Dumas and the
Freebooters.
And the Freebooters?
I like Freebooters. I looked that up. It's another term for pirate. I don't know how we're going to slide that in there. But
I like that.
I like them calling themselves the Freebooters.
We're the Freebooters. I like that a lot. Okay, Captain Dumas and the Freebooters. And
I was trying to figure out a way to put animal in that, because the kids need to know these are animal pirates.
Yeah.
But Captain Dumas and the Freebooters, I feel like they'll just see it on the picture, They'll see that it's animals.
Exactly. But yeah, that's my show idea. Let's come up with some episode ideas.
I like it. Now, if it's a pirate show, I feel like every I know you just want to do episodic, but like there's like a a rule in pirate shows that there has to be like some hidden treasure that they're looking for. That's like the whole goal.
Yeah.
Is to find this hidden treasure.
I was
The
thinking
secret
of
Captain.
that. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to do that, but you could do that. That could be like their goal that they never really reach. Like every episode, they're like, "Well, we need to find the hidden treasure of this guy," but they never really, they never really do anything about that.
Yeah.
And maybe you could have, every once in a while, you have an episode where they're actually getting closer to finding this hidden treasure.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that could be
What
Captain
do you think is the
Dumas.
best? What animal do you think is the best pirate?
Wild
Would be the best pirate.
is the best pirate because he's like the most pirate-esque because he's like a big loud guy who's like he likes getting into fights, but sometimes he picks up.
Wild's the rat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe Wild is most enthused about this. Maybe I guess Wild's the rat and Dumas is the mouse, and they're kind of like related or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're both the most enthused about getting this treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And the treasure is the loot of Captain. It's got to be some. What do you think is the most the animal that is most piratey? Is it a parrot probably?
Yeah, it's a parrot. That's the most piratey animal of them all.
Captain Poppy the parrot.
Poppy the parrot. Well, do we want to keep up the literary references?
Okay, what's the
Shakespeare
greatest
the
writer?
parrot.
That's a little Willie the parrot.
Willie the parrot.
Okay.
I like Willie the parrot. I was
You really
thinking.
picking Shakespeare as the greatest writer?
No, I was just thinking.
I mean, I guess he's sort of like a foundation for
Yeah,
Western.
he's
writing.
Western. Greatest West. I didn't pick any Eastern writers. I should have, but I don't know any.
I still would have picked an American because whatever. I
How
would've
about
picked Kennedy or
Twain?
something.
Let's say Twain. Captain
Twain.
Twain.
We should do Twain.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Captain Twain the parrot.
Captain Twain the parrot.
Yeah.
That's not good. Parrot. Should be a T. He should be a T animal. Should be.
Yeah, Captain Twain the turtle. Captain Twain the Turtle.
Oh, he should be a turtle. That's right.
Yeah, because he's his own ship. Because he, maybe he has like a really small crew.
That's why he's so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
He's the boat.
We're
That's the secret they learn later. He is the boat.
Mm-hmm.
The captain is the boat. The captain is the ship.
Yeah. And then
That's where and we can make a joke later. That's why the captain always goes down with the ship because he is the ship.
He's the ship.
He can't not go down with the ship.
he's stuck doing that.
So they've got to find his treasure, Captain Twain the Turtle's treasure. Mm-hmm. Like in that alliteration.
Yeah, that's good. That's very Twain-esque. Yeah, and that could be like the episode. Maybe we introduce that in the first episode, right? Is like that's a story that Wilde and Dumas's parents told them as they were growing up of the great pirate Captain Twain the Turtle, and how he hid his greatest treasure all over the lake. He left clues for the greatest pirate in the world to find, or all over the sea. He left clues.
Yeah, and they want to be the greatest pirates ever, and to be that, you got to find the treasure.
Exactly.
And that's also what their opposing crew is looking for.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But they always come back with a newer, better ship each time, because I think it would be funny if they showed back up every time and they always had a new ship and it always got destroyed by the end, but the Recalled, which is the worst ship you've ever seen, just keeps on trucking. It's like the Millennium Falcon of ships, where it doesn't look like much, but it's got... Melville's been tinkering. She's been tinkering down in the bowels of the ship, turning it into an absolute monster. Yeah. Yeah, and then we can have they pick up clues along the way, maybe each not each episode. Oh, what is it?
We could have an episode. This is not on the main story thing. This is an episode idea.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sailing through the lake, and all of a sudden, big chunks of bread keep falling to their left and right, and it's causing massive splashes.
Yeah.
And everyone on the ship's like, "What's going on?" Like, "Oh, we gotta avoid the bread." And meanwhile, the pigeon is like, "Oh no, we've got to get out of here," because he knows what's coming. And that's when all the seagulls start flocking in and munching on all the bread. They've got to, race to get away.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And it
Typhoon.
It could be just like a chase episode. The entire episode is them running away from the seagulls because they don't realize that the back of the ship has caught onto a plastic bag with a loaf of bread in it.
Yeah.
And so
they're like dragging a bunch of bread.
Yeah.
The seagulls are chasing them.
Until they finally get.
They've got to like make a deal with the seagulls to like get them off their backs. Maybe they trade them the bread. They don't realize they have the bread.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the problem is.
Or they like say, who has even more bread, and they point out their rival crew, and then the episode ends with the rival crew being accosted by the seagulls. There you go. Bing bang bosh.
Or maybe one of the characters that we do that as well at the end. That when they're making the deal with the seagulls, one of the characters actually has been hoarding bread and they didn't know it.
Yeah, Bronte. Bronte's been hoarding bread.
Bronte and the seagulls know it, and he has to reveal it, and then he has to give up his bread.
And the whole crew's mad at him, but then he makes an apology. And they forgive him because apologies are important.
They are.
Yeah. But I think this is a good show for kids.
I like it.
Yeah.
It was I'll be honest, I expected a card game or something. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that, but I like the show.
Yeah,
very good.
I think that this has a lot of potential for play sets. That was more what my mind went to. Instead of a card game, it was like, well, you get the recalled play set, and you all get little plastic versions of the characters, and then you can get all plush versions of the characters, and then you get, the episode they all turn purple. Well, obviously, we all have to have purple versions of all of the toys, and everything. There's a lot of play set potential here. You can get Captain Twain the Turtle, right? All that fun stuff, right?
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we decided it was Cap'n Dumas and the Freebooters, which I think is a fantastic name. Yeah. And should we have any sort of like authority figure? Right? Like, because they're pirates, right? But they're not pirates if there's no, like, law that they're breaking. Obviously, we're not going to have them, like, being criminals. But, like, you have, like, a British aristocracy kind of guy. And he's in, like... Because I'm imagining these are all toy boats. Think of Stuart Little. That one scene in Stuart Little, maybe 2, where he has to sail a toy boat. And there's, like, a toy boat race. And his is the only one that's manned.
Yeah.
Think that, right? And we get one that's like, this is like not a toy boat, this is a replica boat, and it's like a big, it's huge, it's got like functioning cannons and like real sails and ropes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We have crickets, maybe crickets, they could be the British.
Crickets are the British.
Yeah. We have like this huge cricket crew, and it's like 100 crickets, and they're all like, yes sir.
The cricket crew.
That cricket.
I like that.
Yeah, the cricket crew. With Captain, I don't know, who's...
Captain Crook.
Captain Thatcher. I couldn't think of anyone else British. Captain Thatcher and the cricket crew. There you go. But yeah, that's my show. That's all I got.
I like it. It's good. Good show.
All right, well... This is a little bit of a shorter episode today, but that's all right. That's all right. Kids shows are going to be shorter than long-form serialized content with twists and turns and serial killers and aliens and all this stuff that we do normally. There were no serial killers in this pitch, not even one.
There still could be. We could have Silas the serial killer.
There we go.
He's a worm.
A worm, and he's really bad at serial killing. No, I don't.
Or snail. Oh, I like that. Or I'll go with worm. Worm. He's like constantly trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And he's so slow, and they can get away so easily. And he also can't go in the water
because he's a worm.
They spend all their time in the water.
Yeah.
And he's just in the background. We never mention this, right? This is just something that you and I know because you pitched the show just now. But there always is a worm in every episode on the land that is trying to get to them.
That really wants to kill them all. Really in a horribly violent way, right?
And on the final episode of the show, that's when the worm gets there and the ship blows up.
Or he drops an anvil on them.
Yeah.
I love an anvil in a kid's show. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Cloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat, and remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to all imagine. And maybe make toys of, and we can sell those toys for a profit.
I do like profits.
Who doesn't? Communists. Goodbye, everyone.
That's the moral of the show. Goodbye, everyone. See ya.